Kev, I want to talk about the fight of the year, in my opinion, which was Zepeda versus Baranchek.
Okay.
Man.
Yeah.
I knew right away. I felt like I was watching Foreman versus Lyle. Everyone's getting dropped, literally left and right. I think there was a total of 8 knockdowns recorded in this beast of a fight. I mean, it was just total balls to the walls. The momentum and everything swung back and forth, whether it was their hands or the rounds who won.
Right there. Wow.
Everything you need to know right there in that shot. And that was just one of the greatest fights I think I've ever seen in my entire life. And that's no exaggeration. It's not because I was thirsty for some good boxing.
Yeah.
Good boxing came to me and quenched my thirst. Like, that's what happened. Yeah. I remember, like, I was telling my wife, dude, I was like, you got a Emmanuel Stewart style. You got to look at this. You got to see, oh my God. I was screaming. My neighbors must have thought I was losing my mind because I knew what the hell I was looking at. I'm like, this is insane.
Yeah. And just to say there, to cut you off there, not only was that fight of the year, that was my fight of the year, that was your fight of the year, and this was also my KO of the year. Let's check out the video.
No knockout yet because these two guys have a heart. Oh, big he bends the leg, and this fight is done. What a knockout from Jose Zepeda.
That was great.
Oh my goodness. Again, I sound like Emmanuel Stewart right now. Oh my gosh. When that happened, it was so explosive. And I don't know if our listeners remember what was happening. It was so back and forth. And it almost looked like, Baranchek was coming on a little bit.
Yeah. It was like every time one guy was kind of take the play or get the edge. I mean, it was just so back and forth. It was like Castillo and Corrales, Jose Luis Castillo and Diego Corrales. The only difference, this fight was kind of compacted into about five or six rounds, and there were just so many knockdowns. It was almost like, just imagine if Chico Corrales and Jose Luis Castillo didn't have the iron chins that those guys have. That's kind of what we saw there. I mean, it was pretty amazing to watch. That was my KO of the year. What was your knockout of the year?
Povetkin White. That was something stellar. I always had a lot of respect for Dylan White, and what happened there was just like, wow, that shot was so impactful, and you knew it. Like, there's certain knockouts that happen in this game, Kevin, as we know, that you just know when it happens, when you could just see exactly someone. It's coming up on the screen right now, guys. You could see someone just laying there lifeless. Now, thankfully, he got back up and he's still full of life to this day. But man, Povetkin's KO of White was something else, especially when you consider the severity of heavyweight boxing and how hard these guys can hit, especially if they hit you clean. It doesn't get any dirtier in terms of like nastiness, in terms of knockouts than that. But it was a clean shot. It was amazing.
It wasn't a bad fight either. Just for the fact that I think the round before, it almost looked like Povetkin was gone. He was in dire straits, and that punch, it was actually in a way, compared to the other fight, the knockout was almost more dramatic in the sense that Povetkin wasn't really in the fight. I mean, the punch just came like out of nowhere, where he pretty much looked. I mean, White looked like he was just on his way to pretty much dominating and getting him out of there, and that's what we love about boxing. I mean, you make one little small mistake, you get a little bit overeager, and you can get caught, especially in the heavyweight division where guys are just pretty much. I mean, there's some light punchers in the heavyweight division, but pretty much any guy can knock out any fighter at any time. So, I mean,
there's no doubt. You hit the nail on the head. The heavyweight division, anything can happen at any point in time, and you're absolutely right. White was, giving it to Povetkin, and Povetkin we know is kind of like on the downside, but now this kind of brings him up on the upside of things and looking much better. To throw a shot out there like that, especially against, White could punch. He's got pop. So that took a lot of balls for Povetkin to play poker there a little bit and throw in his chips and go all in. And that's exactly what happened. And that shot put him back in heavyweight conversation, in which, Kev, I want to talk to you about a little bit later, things we could look forward to in 2021. But what I want to ask you is, who do you think was the fighter of the year in 2020?
Let me see. Fighter of the year. That's a pretty tough one, John. I'm a little bit on the fence, so I kind of have it. I think we talked about this a little bit earlier. I kind of have a fighter of the year A, and I have a fighter of the year B. And pretty much before actually this weekend, the guy that I had was Teofimo Lopez, clearly. I mean, there hasn't been a whole lot of big fights this year, so he was a guy that stood out the most to me as far as having a big win against a pound-for-pound talent such as
Lomachenko.
Vasyl Lomachenko. And then this weekend, I mean, Canelo had such a dominant performance against Callum Smith that he can make a case for himself. The only reason why I'm giving it to Lopez is because Lopez was about a 3-1 underdog, and Canelo was a heavy favorite. So if you kind of balance it that way, but obviously Lopez and Lomachenko was a closer fight. Although obviously the scorecards, they had Lopez like so wide, but it was a more competitive fight, especially down the stretch. Canelo just basically he built on his lead the whole way, so he got better as the fight went on. So who do you feel was fighter of the year? I mean, I have Lopez as a fighter of the year, and Canelo slightly behind him.
I'm going to agree with Teofimo. His accomplishment against Lomachenko was excellent. Canelo, definitely right there. I'm going to have to agree with you on all accounts of what you said, especially being a superstar that Canelo is in this tough time and taking on a formidable opponent in Smith and still be willing to say that he wants to fight the best. So I got to give him props for that. And I'm going to sound a little corny right now. I think every fighter that stepped in the ring this year during this crazy year that we've had are all fighters of the year, whether they won or lost, whether they were names that we knew or we didn't know. I got to give him props, man. Boxing is not easy. Getting COVID tested is not easy. Dealing with all the stuff that they have to deal with, not having crowds and for a large part of some of these shows is not easy. Compromised pay is not easy. So I want to shout out every boxer or any athlete or any person that's working, doing their job, blue collared, out there, whether they're sitting behind a desk or whatever they're doing, construction working, whoever's out there, you're all my fighters of the year, because this has been the craziest shit show year of all time. So anyone, big up. I'm going to give you all cheers and happy holidays.
Yeah, it takes, especially considering boxing it's such a mental game. And I think this whole COVID-19 thing has affected a lot of people mentally, as far as, like there's people, and I know some people, some family members and people close to me that have actually contracted it. So obviously it's something that's very serious. It's something not to be ignored. So from a health standpoint, and then also from a mental standpoint, I think a lot of these fighters have been affected. Just want to give a shout out to Matthew for being in the chat. He had to log off, but definitely want to thank him for joining us this evening. And
thank you, Matt.
So what else we going to be talking about? So fighter. So you had Fighter of the Year. We talked about
Teofimo, and I think he's well deserving of it. Huge accomplishment, like you said. He was an underdog. He was fighting the popular consensus pound for pound fighter on a lot of people's rankings and whatnot. In Lomachenko, I want to kind of foreshadow to 2021 things I'm looking forward to. We have a lot of good potential matchups. Errol Spence versus Terrence Crawford. That would be a great matchup. I also think that Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua would be a tremendous matchup. The biggest fight, in my opinion, in UK history. And maybe, who knows overall in boxing? I mean, do we have an attendance? Do we have a live gate? We don't know what's going to happen from one day to the next. So I think that this year salvaged itself and put things in perspective a little bit better.
I think the end of 2020 ended pretty strong. I mean, we had some decent matchups. We had the Garcia and Errol Spence bout, which, obviously I wasn't going to pay like $80 for it, but it was still like, it was great to see some fans in attendance. And I think that was a good thing about the Canelo and Smith fight. There were some fans there. So that was positive. I believe there was also fans at the Joshua Pulev fight. Was there?
Yes, there was. Yep.
How many fans were at that fight?
I think off the top of my head, I could be wrong. I think it was about 30 to 40% capacity. So, I mean, there was a good amount. It looked pretty full. You never know, Kev, because we live in Vegas, guys that are listening, and the bottom line is they say 25% capacity at some of these places. Bullshit. Like, you go to some places, it's crazy. There are people everywhere, so I think they probably allowed a little bit more than they let on to believe, but it looked great. It was aesthetically pleasing. It looked good for television. It was great to hear, the Sweet Caroline and the Brit fans, who I think are the greatest fans on the planet. They get so into their boxing and they're so passionate, and it really engages you. And for me, Kev, I'm going to be honest, like, my viewer experience watching boxing and sports in general in 2020, I didn't mind there not being a crowd, especially I've been in gyms, I've seen spars and whatnot. And I think it was kind of cool just to have it quiet. You hear the punches more, you hear the corner more. But when I saw the crowd come through and started listening to the cheers and chants, and I was like, okay, this is boxing. This is what is missing. And so we do need that enthusiasm. But I think overall the networks have been trying. I think everyone's been trying, sometimes good and sometimes not so good. The one I give the most props to is actually outside of boxing is Dana White for the UFC. He was actually guinea pigging this whole thing. He was the one that started to launch sports. He didn't give a shit. He was like, I'm going to run my shows. You're not going to stop me. I'm going to buy an island. I got people that are willing to work and fight. And everyone watched the whole sports world, whether you were an executive at marketing or a fighter yourself or a baseball player. Everyone had their eyes on the UFC, and they were successful with what they did. And once they had done that successfully, notice what happened. Other sports followed. So I give big ups and props to Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL, golf, everything out there, NFL, all that stuff.
Somebody's got to take the lead, and then hopefully willingly people will follow. And
he was that guy.
And do the right thing at the same time. Obviously we don't want people to get sick or whatnot, but obviously I think in society you got to find balance. So so hopefully over time people will kind of figure out what is the correct way to move forward. And see what's best plan of action moving forward, and not just being living our lives in fear.